Greetings and welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of UC Weekly News. I'm your host, as always, David Danto, and boy, do I have a roster of experts and friends and analysts and people that were with me and parallel with me at CES 2024 this year. I want to get everybody's opinion in, not just mine, and chat about the show. But let's go around one time in the order that I have them on my screen and let them each introduce themselves to you. They've all been on the show before. Carolina, why don't you start?
Thank you for having me. Happy New Year, everyone. We made it. We made another CES. I'm Carolina Milanesi. I'm the founder of the Heart Tech and president at Creative Strategies.
Thank you very much, Carolina. Adrian, you're next on my screen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adrian Cotteril. I'm the editor-in-chief of Daily Do, a blog that covers pretty much many things, out of home and ad tech, programmatic, and some AI stuff these days.
Thank you very much, Adrian. And Greg.
Greg Harper, and I'm co-founder of Gadget Off and also president of Harper Vision. And we look at trends and technology and where things are going and celebrate the wonderful world of technology in lots of different ways.
So I think you guys, some of you I ran into at the show, others I didn't. I think we've all kind of talked about looking at each other and saying, "Gee, are we really doing this again this year?" I mean, it is not a fun event to go to. It's important in many ways, but boy, is it a strain. It's a lot of craziness, and they made it harder this year. But I'm not the only one, right? That gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning and says, "Why are we doing this press conference this early? And why are we going?" That's kind of everybody's thought at this point, right?
I was talking to Gary Shapiro, and I think we were trying to figure out was the 37th or 36th year I've done this, which is kind of nuts. But yeah, especially living on the East Coast, you're getting up at 4 in the morning to do East Coast calls at 5, and then heading to the show floor, and then doing the dinners afterwards, and rolling into bed at midnight and starting the day over again. And after 7 days, by the time I got on the plane going back, which was very bumpy, by the way, I was like, ready. Okay, I'm done.
We're not doing this again. Carolina, you too? Your experience too?
I did it differently this year. I definitely cut back on the amount of press conferences and that I was present at. I found that for my customers and my audience, the value has diminished over time as you find everything online anyway. And people tend to consume more video content than written content as well. X is not the same kind of platform as it was when it was Twitter, as far as sharing what is going on real time, and LinkedIn is less real time. So you have the time to go back and share your thoughts. So I spend most of my time in meetings and definitely not on the main show floor because logistics of Ubering and everything else made it a little bit more complicated this year. So I spend most of my time at the Venetian looking at smaller vendors and then a lot of different hotels for meetings.
Yeah. And I have to get it told, and I told you so in there. I remember having a conversation 5 years ago. I don't remember how many years ago it was with Karen Chupka, who's no longer with the organization, when they announced that the Raiders were coming to Vegas. And I said, that's going to kind of be a problem when we do CS. She said, "No, don't worry about it. They'll never have a home game when we're doing CS, and we'll never have to
And
worry
there
about the
was.
Super Bowl because it's in February." And then you have the home game right next to Mandalay Bay, where they're doing the media center. You have, for the entire show, in the evenings from 8 p.m. all night, there was only one lane open on the strip between the Bellagio and the airport because they're getting ready for the Super Bowl. I mean, the city, it's the largest convention in North America, and the city doesn't care. They're going to throw any obstacles at it as well. I mean, Adrian, did you have that experience too?
Just to follow on from what Carolina said, I didn't do the press days either. I found them less and less valuable. And funny, it was you and I were talking about how the press conferences on the media days a couple of years ago weren't at all live. We got up at 4 o'clock and went to a show. I went to one press conference with you, and it was just a YouTube video played back in front of a live audience. There was no point in being there in person. So I found over the last few years that being there on the media day has been less and less important. I did think ahead of the Raiders game. So another reason when I thought, shall I fly in on the Saturday evening or the Sunday morning and do that Sunday? Or no, I flew in on Monday in the end.
Yeah, but David, he's absolutely right. I agree with both of them. I mean, the press days have become a lot less meaningful. I mean, CES Unveiled is still useful. The trends and things, they had some technical issues this year, but those are useful things. But the actual press day, really, they used to show product on the thing. Now nobody's showing product. It's basically slideshows and people talking about their sustainability and all the wonderful stuff they've done, which I can read. Actually, I got it all in advance for that. So there was not a huge amount of value there. But I agree with Carolina that, being in meetings and off the show floor, far more meaningful, and having the ability to meet with people. And that's the nice thing about CES, because everybody comes there, even if they're not in the consumer part of the business. So you get a chance to meet a lot of people that you normally talk to and all the rest. But if we're all going to be there, let's meet up at such and such a time.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
I was going to say, although I found that this year there were less executives than normal, and I don't know if it was just a budget issue, if it was a last minute issue. Last year was the first year we came back live, so people were more tentative. This year, it felt like everything was delayed a little bit. Like I was already getting pitches for Mobile World Congress before getting pitches for CES. So it seemed like people were still trying to assess whether or not it is still worth going to the show from a brand perspective, not from an analyst or reporter perspective.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, but the show still gives you the trends. You still get to feel where things are going, and you can't get that from the press conferences and the press releases. You really have to see, the strikingness of how much Microsoft, for example, was involved in everybody's announcements because of AI. The focus on the vehicle as your entertainment hub as opposed to appliances. The sort of coming down off of some of the little widgets and all the rest that we used to see to a lot of other areas that we hadn't thought about L'Oreal, for example, as being the keynote. That was a surprise one. But, they showed a brush that would allow you to do your hair coloring, and a phone app that would look at your face and decide what kind of makeup you have. So there were things that were happening there that you wouldn't expect. And those you're not going to find by reading the press conferences or reading the press releases and going to press conferences. So that you still have to go to see.
Yeah, I would agree with everybody's statements here, in that, it was still a valuable experience when I look at the end of it, no matter how I felt leaving the town and for the couple of days after being home and recovering. It was still a worthwhile trip to go, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same show that I've attended, for decades before. And I really wish that they would kind of grab the bull by the horns and fix that. So let's transition to the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Carolina, you called it AI washing. I want to get a little bit of information from you on that. An analyst friend of mine said that 75% of the AI is hype and BS, and 25% of it is, oh my God, wow, look at what they've done. What's your take on that early trend and theme?
I am a strong believer in AI coming and changing everything that we do, whether you are on a consumer side or an enterprise side. I agree Microsoft was everywhere because of AI, and I think that is going to be the same at Mobile World Congress. But the timing of it made it such that there was a lot of vaporware. And that, a lot of companies were just talking about AI and even so more generative AI when they weren't really talking about that.
Yeah.
It could have been machine learning, could have been something else still valuable, but jumping on that bandwagon of the marketing, tagline of generative AI is what you saw more so on the show floor, I have to say, than not in the keynotes. Like AI was everywhere on the show floor. There were a couple of things from an AI perspective that were interesting. The one that everybody's talking about is Rabbit, which is a small startup from China that had a cute little square gadget that is basically an AI in a box. And you link that with all the account that you have and is able to do things for you, like calling an Uber or booking something for you or recall something that you've done in the past. Now, the question of why does it have to be separate from your phone and not an app? Do you trust a startup? Where is the data going to be stored? How secure is it going to be? Who they're going to share it with? there are so many different questions that pertain to the business model and not the AI per se. But intriguing that we see a different way and also new blood coming in, right? Not just the big tech companies like AWS, Google, and Microsoft. So.
And Carolina, you mentioned Mobile World, and so Samsung released their or announced their phone, the S24, Galaxy 24, 2 days ago now.
Yeah, I just came back from the launch.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean that phone has a lot of AI capability and is protected by their Knox product. So I would probably trust that more than I would a startup device. I saw that the Rabbit thing too, but what you have is a device that has communications capability, has visual, has cameras, and intelligence. That's a pretty interesting thing. And and when I get back from ISE, Integrated Systems Europe, on the 2nd of February, my Apple Vision will be waiting for me. So I'm going to be interesting to see how they use that and how they take the data I'm doing there, because I'm sure that where Apple wants to go is going to be tying some of that together. So I agree with you that the AI, there was a lot of it, which was just they felt they had to put AI on the table. If they didn't put AI on the table, they were non-players. Very few of them really did it, but the ones who did it were doing it right. Actually, it was pretty interesting.
Adrian, your thoughts, AI?
Yeah, I'm a downer on this. I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, I think on my blog, I used to refuse to use the word AI when it was ever included in a press release because I thought most of it was make believe. I think the numbers are more like that 90% or maybe 95% of the AI stuff at CES probably had very little to do with AI. There was some great stuff that you mentioned, the Samsung stuff, Microsoft in particular. I was disappointed that Nvidia didn't have a stand because I think they had a lot to say about it. They were actually in a meeting room in the Cosmopolitan.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and
but there was interesting stuff there if you went over.
correct. But you had to get, it's just like Carolina was saying earlier, you have to get an Uber and get over there. I mean, just breaking away from the AI side of things, because I saw some great generative AI stuff, which is really important to one of my main areas of work in the out of home advertising industry. And there was 2 or 3 really good people doing good generative AI, probably similar to what Adobe have been doing for about a year or so. But and I don't think Adobe were there this year, but a lot of startups doing some stuff, and they're sponsored by or funded by LG or by Samsung or by Microsoft. But if I can just for a second, this fact, David, that the show is now all over the place is one of the things that I think leaves us with a bad taste in our mouth when we, as analysts, come back. I started the show on the first day. I went up to the new hotel. Well, sorry, what's it called?
Which new one? Fontainebleau or
Fontainebleau.
Yeah,
Cosmopolitan? Yeah.
the Fontainebleau. Yes, I'll come on to that later on when we talk about our best bits of the show. But so I started off at an event in the Fontainebleau, and then I went down to the Aria for Sea Space. And then if you wanted to go to see Nvidia or Bose, you went to Cosmopolitan, and then Eureka was at Venetian, and then there was other things. Obviously, the convention center was the Westgate, the West Hall, the North Hall, the Central Hall, and I probably missed a couple of places where there were events as well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help. It doesn't help that it's all over the place. It
Well,
really does.
they also the South Hall was closed this year because they're renovating it.
That's
Well, it's
right.
been closed for the past couple. It's been closed for 4 years now.
And it doesn't make it an easy place to do it, and that goes back to logistics. But I won't keep pushing the point. I agree with all of you. I did notice, and I thought that this was actually rather stirring when we think about themes. When I did my coverage for No Judah this year, and here I'll put it on the screen underneath so everybody can take a look at it if you haven't seen it, because I got some links to videos and some press conferences in there. Nice stuff. What I researched what other people wrote about as well. And I made the point, that it's the parable of the blind man and the elephant, where, if 20 different people go to the show, they wind up seeing 20 different things. It's very different. And one of the things that was striking to me as I looked at it is there were a number of devices, Rabbit being one of them that you pointed out, which I think was cool when I saw the video. There were a number of devices that made people's best of show lists and also made people's worst of show lists, the same device. because, while, hey, it's awesome that you have this device that you can speak to, and, they have their new language and it takes action for you. I forget the acronym that they came out with, but, like it'll call you the Uber, it'll get you the food, it'll do your itinerary in the UK when you're traveling. It's also on the worst of lists because I have to give them all of my passwords, and where do those passwords go? And what's the security issue around all of this AI? And nobody was really paying any attention to that. So if you look at the best of and the worst of lists, they're almost the same gear. So it was actually very interesting. And some of the other themes they talked about, which I don't want to get into too much right now, but I know they're very important to me and to you guys as well. They talked about sustainability and inclusivity in a number of different ways. Sustainability is now something that's real, and we're seeing a number of the manufacturers, building their products with recaptured plastics, or zero cycle, as they call it, where, it's all not new stuff, that the Eastman people are working on really cool stuff. And then, inclusivity is something that's always been a passion of mine, both, around DEI, around making sure that we're making products that work for people. Greg, you mentioned the L'Oreal product, the idea of being able to put on makeup, or they've even, one of the stands had, a device for people with Parkinson's so that it could steady their hand. I mean, these are really good improvements. And we can talk about some of the gadgets as we move forward in devices, but it was good to see some of those themes emerge.
So when you were talking about AI, no one mentioned, or at least not yet, the two little robots that were out there from Samsung and LG, Bali and whatever the Rosie, whatever
they all have unmemorable names. All the robots
yeah,
that were.
yeah. I mean, it was interesting that the Bali, the Samsung one, was running around, and it was giving you your schedule, and making reservations for you and everything else, and it was following you around. And then the LG one, they were talking about how it helps your pets and all the rest. So I mean, there are things going out there to bring the AI into the home in ways that we hadn't thought, that were really truly ask questions. I mean, we've all been using the A word, which I won't use because somebody will start reacting to me here. But in my car now, they did a software upgrade, and I just tell it, turn on the steering wheel heating, turn on the rear defroster and all the rest, and I just tell it to do things, and it does it all and comes back, and it's integrating that AI. So, where's the nearest gas station? Where can I get food? And it's no longer touch panels and all the rest. It's all talking to it, and it's all using intelligence. And that, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And those two little robots, whether they're products or not, is not the question, but the concept will be there.
Which is also something that's driving inclusivity around people that have handicaps and some other issues, and capabilities. The voice control is actually finally getting to where we had hoped it would be. All right, so let's not waste any more time. Let's go around in the order we did before. And why don't you give me your top two, your highlights from the show? Again, these don't have to be the same. They don't have to be equivalent, but your one or two things you said, wow, that was really cool. I liked it. I picked it up. Carolina, you're first. Why don't you go ahead?
I actually, it's not a device, but I want to go back to what you were saying about sustainability, because I actually was hoping to see way more than what I saw. And I think, to me, that signals that the US as a market is still way behind Europe. And we will see much more talk about sustainability at Mobile World Congress compared to here, even if obviously CES and its international show, there's a reflection of what the market wants to see. So I was somewhat disappointed about that. The other thing was, I didn't see as much, or maybe because of how the show was structured, it was harder to see yes health, but not so much women health as always, which is always a problem. So to your point about inclusion and diversity, there were a couple of interesting food tech, I guess. One, a roaster that allows you to basically get green coffee and roast it in whichever flavor, and dark, medium, or not. I think it was like $1,500, which over the course of the life of, if you didn't as much coffee as I do, is actually a pretty good deal. And then a lot of ice cream makers, gluten-free, dairy-free, everything free, which kind of makes you, as an Italian, wonder what's left of the actual ice cream, whatever it is that you're going to end up eating. But a lot of from a processing perspective, trying to be, I guess, more sustainable, both from a ingredient point of view and healthier. So nothing really that got my attention. Probably the trend that I focused on the most was around AI PCs, and there was a good showcase at Intel where you clearly saw the whole ecosystem coming together from Microsoft to all the major PC OEMs, really finally understanding that is the battle is really from a PC versus Apple point of view. And so they need to come together, have a cohesive story, trying and explain to normal consumers what AI is and the advantage of having an AI-enabled PC. So to me, that was probably the biggest takeaway.
And the PC manufacturers, I think three of them at this point have now moved on to designs with detachable screens that can get bigger. So I think I don't know if that's going to stay, if that's a trend that's going to pick up, but at least a lot of them are doing that now.
Yeah, Intel was showcasing a dual screen laptop. So basically think about a regular laptop with an extra screen on top, and then you fold it down twice.
Right. So that was interesting to see.
Can I just say on the digital health stuff that you mentioned, Carolina, the halls there didn't they were the digital health stuff I saw was good, interesting stuff, but I wonder if the right people saw it. It was tucked away as usual in the Venetian. I went there. It was very.
Adrian, let me interrupt. Just saying, was it because I thought the health expo moved from the Venetian to the North Hall this year? That's where I saw Abbott and a few of the other companies. It may have been that it was split up, and that's why it seemed smaller.
I think it was split up. Yeah,
Okay,
it was definitely split up because I was looking at some of the, every year there's a big hoo-ha about sex toys, and I was looking for my little corner of the Venetian where I normally go and meet with the same brands over the years, and they weren't there. And somebody told me they were on the main show floor. So I think that they split the health session.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Well, therein lies the problem because I was looking at the digital health stuff in the Venetian, thinking, right, I've ticked this box. There was some great stuff, but it's the doctors, the cardiologists, the medical practitioners in North America or Canada, wherever they come from. Were they there? Are they the sort of people that CES attracts to go and see these products, or are they just relying on analysts to write about it for magazines and things? It seemed to be very under trafficked. But
Well,
they
I was
had
there. I was
great
there with
stuff.
my cousin this year, who was actually going. She registered, paid for the health tech track, which didn't start until Wednesday, and was vastly under-resourced, according to her. I wasn't there, but they had rooms that were meant to hold 100 people that had 300 in them, talking about health so I think that there was an attempt made clearly, but I think we can keep going down the rabbit hole on every one of these things, and I won't interrupt you, Adrian. You can continue, but I do think logistically this show was not handled as well as past shows, and we're stumbling upon multiple examples of that.
Yeah, I'll stop there. I didn't know that they were split into two. That's a real revelation to me. But it's an important subject for our society, the digital health. I think is one of the things that CES could really do a really. I mean, I think it's done a good job in the past. I think it could do a really exceptional job going forward. Sounds like it did with some of the health summits or conferences that your niece went to.
My niece, Katie.
Um,
What are your two big things, Adrian? What are the things that you're taking away from the show?
Interesting. Okay. So the two big things. Well, first thing was Shelley Palmer. He is one of I'm a bit of a Shelley Palmer geek fan, stalker sometimes. I keep bumping into him in the strangest places. He does some great talks. He talked in Miami this year at the Possible event. He's talked at CES last year. And he interviewed Linda, I won't try to pronounce her surname, the new CEO of X, on the Monday at the Fontainebleau. That's my first opening of the show at some weirdly named marketing leadership summit. Hugely attended. I mean, probably 500-600 people went. They had Linda. They had will.i.am. They had some real other celebrity people that were there. But Shelley is a really good interviewer, and he got some good stuff out of Linda. She was only interviewed a couple of weeks ago in New York, where she didn't really answer any questions or say anything important. But for those of us who I do agree again with Carolina that Twitter is not what it was. I think we all agree that, David. I think you're probably not even on it very much these days at all because of
Cold turkey. I can't let my good name support Nazis and hate speech and the rest of it. So I'm on everything but right now.
okay. But he got some good stuff out of Linda, and she sort of backtracked a little bit on that stupid thing that Elon said maybe a month ago when he told Disney to, F off.
Yes.
So she sort of backtracked, and yeah, she had some good answers and things. She came across really well, but it was mainly down to the good interviewing techniques of Shelley. So that was the first thing I saw all week. That was Tuesday morning. I got to see the Fontainebleau, which was a great hotel, completely empty, and I keep seeing these things on social media that all the executives have been leaving. See why? There was just nobody there. But a lovely hotel and a good walk. Well, a nice walk, a sensible walk, obviously to the West Hall once you finish there. So that was my first highlight. I think my week didn't get much better than sitting in with Will I Am and Shelley and Linda, to be quite honest.
Okay.
So I was underwhelmed by CES this year. As analysts, we obviously go every year, and I may not have been going as long as some of you, but I've been going a long, long time. I mean, if you're a CTO or a CIO or technical person in a big company, you should probably go to CES once every 2 years. If you go every year, you see the same old things. Once every 2 years, you can keep up with enough trends to keep things going. So I know we're speaking. Sorry.
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Oh, it's sad because we're speaking from a privileged position. We get invited to all the meetings and parties. Lots of people don't do. We get the free lunches and the free this, that, and the other, and early access to queues and all that sort of stuff. So we shouldn't complain. But I was a little bit underwhelmed. I do think the logistics, as you said, David, probably let the show down a little bit. What I found interesting was there were a lot of stands. Again, this comes down to basic doing business, if you like. There are so many stands where the exhibitors were on their phones. They weren't doing anything. They weren't in the corridors trying to get people in. There was nothing. If you went to Eureka Park, it was crowded because all the stands seemed to have shrunk this year,
Yeah.
which made it a bit weirder. But nobody really said what they were doing. So you're walking past, and as a journalist, I feel like I ought to be talking to people and finding out what they did. But there was nothing at a glance. I look at the stand. What do you do? There's nothing there that tells me. And then the people are on their mobile phones because they're bored and people don't pop in. And it made me think. I know, David, you and I have been big proponents and fans of showstoppers and Pepcom in the past. I thought Pepcom this year was a downer. I know you didn't ask me for downers, but Pepcom wasn't as good as it was. I think they're struggling to get good influencers along. What I noticed about Pepcom, if I can just go off on one for a second, I'll try and be very quick. But the people, the analysts and influencers at Pepcom, as you know, if you go to Pepcom, you can only go if you're an accredited analyst or journalist or media influencer. They didn't
Well,
know
they
how.
don't let media influencers in. You actually have to be a journalist, and they
Ah,
severely cut back on the journalists they were letting in last year. So a
right.
lot of people are ignoring the event, and
Okay.
thusly it's not making as much headway and
Right.
money.
That's interesting. I think I knew that. I think you may have said that to me before. Just quickly, my point was that most of the attendees didn't know how to behave. They didn't realize that the drink was free. And so every time I went to get a drink, which was quite common, quite often, I mean, during the evening, people were standing there saying, "Can I have a water?" And they went, "Yes." And they gave them the water. Would you like something else? They said, "Well, is it free?" And they didn't know. They didn't know what the plan was, that the alcohol was free. And I'm not saying what those nationalities were. They certainly weren't American influencers, but nobody knew what the thing was. The game was that you get free food, free drink, invited along, some inclusivity, and then you walk around the stands. So that was a bit weird. So Pepcom, I thought, was actually quite disappointing this year. But going back to the stands, I thought Bosch was the most interesting, and that's because I got several good cups of coffee. But it was the people on the stand, basically, and that was the point I want to say. I've been trying to write about this for a couple of days now. Bosch were in the central hall, I think, just down the road from LG, and they did everything right to get people into their stand. I don't know very much about Bosch. I always knew that when I worked for Intel that they did lots of things for cars. I think they make power drills, they make power tools, they make electrical appliances and things. I don't know very much about them. I just see them as a big German company. But they attracted people onto their booth by giving away coffee. They gave you these free coffee mugs, which were recyclable. Great story about recyclable mug that you can reuse, dishwasher safe, microwavable safe, reusable, blah, blah, blah. So they got you in. And when you were in the line, there were Bosch employees talking to you, asking you about what you do, what was going on. You had a great cup of coffee from a new machine that I am now pretty committed to buying. It'll come out in the summer of 2024. And you put your grinds, you put your coffee beans in the top, and you've got a little app, and you can then make whatever you like. And they were using these prototypes of these machines to make your coffee. And then you got into the stand, and then it was just like the company came across as a really nice, careable company with sustainability, nice people. The people were, am I allowed to say diverse? They were of different ethnic backgrounds, and
They represented humanity, which is
they
what you want.
represented the world, is what I should say. Yeah, and they were just lovely people. They've been really well trained. I mean, I came away glowing. I went back to the stand 3 times, not just because of the coffee, but it was such an enjoyable experience.
So we went through two of the four of us, and so far our top product is coffee.
Yes,
So
that was
that's
it.
really. And
Yeah.
then while you're saying that, Greg, before I go to you and you think of your two, I will mention if you talked about how wonderful the Bosch experience was, and I wasn't there, so I'll take your word for it. I will call out the SK experience where they built an amusement park in the middle of the central hall with rides and with trains and with flying cars. And I walked up to them and I said to 5 different people in the booth wearing the uniform, and I said, "What are we saying here? What is the message?" None of them knew.
No.
They had no idea. The only thing that anybody ever said was, "Did you know SK was one of the biggest companies in Korea? And we
Yeah.
do recycling and we do cars and we do this." Why they built an amusement park in the middle of the hall, I'm sure it was great for the CES, revenue, but wow, that was wild. Greg, what are your two?
Okay. So you've all talked about the ice cream and the coffee and all the rest of things. And I love ice cream. So I looked at those machines and I said, wow, that's great. But I was actually looking for more practical things. So you mentioned the folding screen, Carolina. Here this is the Lenovo. This is the Yoga, which
Yoga.
folds. And it's kind of cool. And this is the one that has the seam on it, which is actually nice because it's got the camera and speaker on it. But they also have one that doesn't have the seam. It's all glass, as does Asus. The Asus that was upstairs in a suite, but that opened up, and that was pretty cool. Also, their headset, which is competing with Lenovo's headset, very very nice, and the X10. I was looking at displays a lot. So I liked what LG was doing, LGD in particular. Again, that was not they were on the show floor, yes, on the West Hall, but you had to be invited. But what LG is doing in terms of the automotive space and how they're using their flexible OLEDs to be able to change things, very, very interesting. Likewise, Samsung with their micro LED transparent, and LG with their transparent OLED with a curtain behind it. All kinds of new opportunities and looking at the way to not have this big black television on the wall. Likewise, what we saw from Hisense and TCL for media consumption. So yes, I like all the gadgets, and I mean I do gadget off, so I mean I of course I should like gadgets. But in terms of practical things, I thought some of those were pretty interesting, including, for example, Hisense had a projection system where the screen itself, the screen material, was the speaker. So it used a ribbon technology. So you sit in front of it, you have a complete surround sound. It's a 110, 120-inch screen, but the speaker was built into the screen. So it's a ribbon speaker in it. Those are the type of innovations I looked at that was interesting. And I mentioned previously some of the AI, the robots, the Valley, the LG one. I don't know what its name is called, but they're very smart. Not to mention my little guy running around here that's been listening to what I'm saying, and it's amazing how expressively you can make just a beep and a face on a screen, and it's actually fun. I mean, I when I come back to my office, the thing welcomes me. It's kind of nice. So there are some trends like that. I did like the smokers. I did like the ice cream machines. GE smoker. You can put your brisket in, let it smoke all day. It doesn't smoke up the house. There was an electric grill that I saw that was a gas grill, eco-friendly, and you can put your pellets in to get whatever flavoring you want without all the smoke and everything else. So there are some innovations there, not to mention robotics for making your sushi to your sandwiches, whatever you want. So interesting things in that front. But again, overall trends, I think we're seeing a lot of innovation in display technology, whether it's projection or OLED or micro LED. I'm a big believer in micro LED. I think we're about to see an inflection point in micro LED. I think micro LED is going to become a major player in there. It's still very early. It's still only in pro use right now, but we'll start seeing micro LED. I think you'll see the infamous Fruit Company, and otherwise known as Apple, coming out with micro LED things. Their new Vision thing is using some form of these new displays, so we're going to see much higher resolution displays than the typical LCD. LG has got some technology to avoid burn-in in OLED, which is very impressive, which of course they had to do for the automotive space too. So I think we're seeing stuff in displays. Disappointed in the audio. There wasn't as much audio as I wanted to see. There were a couple of clever things in audio here and there. The most interesting one, of course, was that screen that was actually the whole screen was a speaker. But it used to be that home theater was the big deal. Not so much as much. Of course, there was still the the high end stuff over in the Venetian, but that's a rarefied area, not so much on the main floor. In the automotive space, a lot of interesting stuff going on there. Of course, we all saw the flying car, although it was with a colleague that said, asked me if I would get one, and I said, I don't know. And he said, well, they just showed pictures of the thing coming down with a parachute. So I went, okay, maybe. But it's kind of fun. But in terms of electric vehicles, and when you have an electric vehicle, it becomes a platform. And that's a very interesting concept because now you can upgrade the platform. It's not just Tesla doing anymore. And then, of course, with the fewer number of components in the car, you have the ability to put more stuff in it and you can spend more money on the entertainment pieces that you wouldn't normally put in because you have to spend money. Yeah, there's a certain point you can't sell the car; it's too expensive. And so now the cars cost less, and you're seeing that in China. So a lot of interesting things there. The trucks, and just, I still saw a lot of things at CES that were inspiring me. But if I had to pick, I'd say the AI and the real true AI and the display technology would be my two.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the perspective from all of you. I'll call out just a couple of honorable mentions, and my favorite of the show. You guys have been familiar with. You've seen the sound dome technology, the directed speakers that you only hear sound if you're directly under it, and if you move to the side, you don't hear it anymore.
Brown Innovations.
Brown Innovations, right? There have been a number of different companies doing that over the years. Well, some of the folks at NTT, a division of NTT, created these for headphones. So you now have transducers that are right off your ear. They sounded wonderful when I had them on at the show, and you cannot hear anything from around or the other side. But because they're open and away from your ear, you can hear traffic, you can hear people talking to you. These are definitely some of the future headphones that I think I like to see. That was NTT Sonority, I think was the company. And then, on the video side, same thing. A company called Vio Now showed us some really interesting innovation where they were shooting a camera through LG's transparent OLED screen. And of course, you see distortion and artifact because you're shooting through moving video, and then they use their processing to get rid of the distortion. So you can actually now have true eye contact without having to stare in a camera or have an AI do some weird Frankenstein thing on you. You can now actually just look right at the screen and have a window, and like you can both be pointing at the same thing and circling it. It's a true video window or a virtual window that they're developing a product. It's a really interesting demonstration. I would probably say, though, a little selfishly, the best product that I saw was the Luxottica Nuance product. I don't know if you guys took time to take a look at that or listen to it. What Luxottica is doing, and if you don't know Luxottica, they're Oakley and Ray-Ban, and they own 90% of the glasses and frames in the world, and the insurance companies and the lens manufacturers. If you wear glasses, it's a Luxottica product or maybe some small fly-by-night. They took two of their most popular glasses and put a microphone array in the frames and put small speakers by the back of the ears or the front of the ears that, again, you can't hear if you're there. So if you're starting to have mild or moderate hearing loss, you now can wear glasses that not only improve your vision, but improve your hearing. And you can have it in 360 mode, or you can adjust it, using an app or using a remote control and have it just follow where you're looking. So if somebody's talking, if you're in that crowded restaurant like I am, and you're about my age, and there's a lot of noise, and you're trying to stare at somebody's mouth, but they're wearing a mask, and you can't really understand what they're saying, playing out of the noise. So you're nodding and getting like 70% of it, 80% of it. This picks up the rest of it. And it's not like wearing over-the-counter earbuds, which were a revolution in hearing aid technology in this country a few years ago. Thank you, Senator Warren, for getting that one through. But you're still wearing an earbud. So if somebody's having a conversation with you, it looks like you're still wearing your earbuds. With glasses on, nobody's going to be able to know you're wearing these products. I'm very excited for them to come out. I've asked them to be one of their first testers when the product's available later this year, and hopefully we get little innovations like that. And again, as you crawl through, each one of us saw different things, but apparently we all saw coffee and ice cream. So I'm going to stay away from that and not go into it again. These are all great follow-ups. This is it. I'm not going to be talking about CES anymore this year. We got it all done. Let's go around one more time and find out what you guys are working on and where people can get in touch with you if they want to. Carolina, what's your life going to be like for the next few weeks, and how would somebody reach out to you if they wanted to?
Well, you can reach me on, I hate to say it, on X, on TikTok, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. I am either Carolina Milanesi or Caro_Milanesi, Milanesi. I am transitioning away from my column on Forbes to focus on my own websites. And so you can find me on creativestrategies.com or theheartoftech.com. And what I'm focusing on, obviously a lot around Vision Pro that is going to be coming soon, and how that is going to impact both the world of computing and VR. A lot of AI. We are doing a lot of studies right now on actually both these topics, and getting ready for Mobile World Congress.
Awesome. Adrian, same questions.
Yeah, you can reach me on Twitter. I refuse to use the word X.
I know.
Daily Do, Daily. I had to think about that. Daily, Daily, DOOH is the easiest way to find me. But you can also Google Daily Do and you'll find my blog. I'm still in two minds about going to Barcelona for ISE. But David, I don't know if you're going, but you can mention that in a second, I guess, when you have your chance to talk next. Not sure I'm going to go to Barcelona. Barcelona is not my favorite place for that, but ISE is a good show. Currently working on, drum roll, our second AI conference. We held the first AI conference for the advertising industry back in November in Toronto, which is the home of AI, by the way, for all those people in Silicon Valley who think that they own AI. Toronto is where the first minglings of AI first came about. We're doing an ad AI conference in Miami as part of the Possible event and part of Emerge Americas and Miami Tech Week. So that's our next thing. So I may not see you in Barcelona if anybody's going, but I'll see a lot of advertising people in April in sunny Miami.
Well, I know Greg will be in Barcelona. Greg, how do people reach you, and where will you be?
So I will be in Barcelona at the end of next week. And Greg at HarperVision, HarperVision, and HarperVision.com, or Greg at Gadgetoff as well. Gadgetoff.com is also reachable. So yes, looking at ISE, I happen to find ISE probably one of the most interesting shows because it's not just US centric, it's world centric, and it's a mixture of Infocom, technology, some of NAB. So it's really a good cross section. I do happen to like Barcelona, so got my favorite hotels when I go there. So I'm looking forward to that. And of course, as Carolina said, the day I get back from Barcelona, hopefully, according to the shipping information, my Vision Pro will be sitting there waiting for me. Just have to confirm that they've gotten my custom custom Zeiss lenses delivered at the same time because I do wear glasses. But hopefully that will also happen at the same time. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen in some of the new display technologies. I think we're going to see a lot of stuff happening in the next 6 months or so. So I anticipate a trip to Korea in the not too distant future, and of course the usual other shows that are out there. I probably am not going to do Mobile World. This is because I've done it so many years, and it's one of these things where that with basically two real players, Samsung and Apple in it, it's a lot of accessories and other things like that. Although, quite frankly, the strategy is still pretty interesting. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Carolina, bringing up the rear and wrapping things up. No, I will not be in Barcelona for ISE this year. That's a little bit of an expensive trip for me to take on while I'm still unaligned. So I will be missing that this year. And no, I will not be getting Vision Pro here because I've been on record for decades, and I will stay on record for decades, that people do not put things on their head during normal course of life. It's a niche product. They won't do it for Google Glass. They wouldn't do it for 3D TVs. They won't do it they don't put things on their face during the course of their normal stuff. So yes, XR will have some, good applications in business and in niche products, but it is not a consumer product and it won't have a widespread audience. So anyway, having said that, and you guys will see which ones of us are right. In February, I will be in Fort Lauderdale at the IT Expo for the first time. I'm moderating one of the sessions at the Future of Work Summit that's taking place in February. And the week after that, the President's Week here in the US, the 20th to the 22nd, we're restarting Collaboration Week New York with the IMCCA. We're going to be at multiple venues, including Cisco and Planar. And Greg, we're going to be up where you are right now in Gateway and a few others yet to be announced. So definitely go to that website, collaborationweekny.org, and register. It's all free. And then, of course, I'll be at Enterprise Connect at the end of March. And who knows where and when I'll be after that and where I'll be working. But you can always get this where you're watching it, whether that's on the various LinkedIn Live channels or simply going to dantoreport.com. I'm David Danto. Thanks so much for joining us every week. We really do appreciate it. We hope we bring some value to you. We got a lot of varied things coming up. We will see you next week.